celebrating 11 years of possibility. Pilot Flying J and Halloran Hilton Hill present Anything is Possible. Today's guest, Renee Kelly.
Welcome to another edition of Anything is Possible, and we have fun here every week as we do the show. My guest today is Renee Kelly. She is the principal of West Valley Middle School. Principal Renee Kelly, welcome to the broadcast.
Thank you.
Isn't it fun here?
It is.
It's a place of possibility.
I thought my workplace was fun, but I don't know. You guys are running a close second.
We got something going on. All right, so let's start here.
Okay.
Principal Renee Kelly. Principal Renee Kelly. Did you have any idea that you would ever be Principal Renee Kelly?
No, candidly. I don't think you play on the playground with your friends and say, hey, when I grow up, I'm going to be the principal of the school.
What did you say?
I said, because I was that bossy girl on the playground, I knew that I had leadership qualities and characteristics. So I did say I'm going to be something special. I did know that God was going to use me in a special way, but I didn't know what that looked like.
Who taught you that? Who made you feel that special?
People say it all the time. It's cliche-ish. It takes a village to raise a child, but it's a cliche because it's true. And so I came from an era where we had tons of people that poured into our lives, from the people in our neighborhood, to our parents, to our grandparents, to even the parents of my friends. I grew up in that era where they tell your mom on you, and then they'd whoop you at their house, and then you get a whooping at your own house.
Right.
So it was just a community that made me believe that I would be a difference maker and made me believe that I was special.
Born and raised in Knoxville, Tennessee?
Mm-hmm. Native Knoxvillian.
And you grew up very wealthy?
Not so much. Not so much. I'm the product of teenage parents, and I don't know that I was planned, but I never felt unwanted. I went to Green Elementary School, I went to Whittle Springs Middle School, and I graduated from Fulton High School, and then went to the University of Tennessee. And no, we didn't have a lot, but here's what's ironic about that. When you're poor and everyone around you is poor, you're right. I mean, everything is relative. So you don't know that. You just know that you're clean, you're fed, you're loved, you're happy.
So growing up, you said you are the daughter of teenage parents. What was that like for you? I mean, was it easy? Was it hard? Did your parents stay together? How did all of that work?
It was, in retrospect, it was challenging because my parents were young. But my parents were always cool. Like, we always played cool music at our house because my parents knew what was in.
Cool music like what? What do you remember hearing
like
growing
the
up?
Temptations, the OJs. We would get down with a little Frankie Beverly and Mays at cookouts. And I didn't understand that wasn't the norm. But it was challenging in that my parents were young. And so there were a lot of material things that we had to forego because my parents didn't have the resources to provide us with a lot of things. My parents aren't together now, but they're cordial to one another. And so you can't ask for any more than that. So,
when did you know you were going to make something of your life, go to college? When did you get on that track?
I was probably in the 7th grade. I think I was about 12 years old, which is why I think I fit so well with middle schoolers, because I know what it's like to be in that place in your life.
What is that place?
Where you constantly compare yourself with other people because you're very insecure, because you're not a kid anymore, but you're not a teenager anymore. So you're very conscientious about how you look. You have acne most of the time. You're not developed. And that's just a challenging place to be. But I was probably 12 when I realized, okay, here's the world, and here's how I'm going to fit in it or not. And again, I had great teachers, and so I thought, I'm not athletic at all, although I live in a house full of athletes.
Right.
I thought, what is it that I do well? Because when you're sizing yourself up and you're comparing yourself to other people, you think, what is it that I do well? And I thought, I do school well. And I had a teacher that said, Renee, you could probably go to college. And I thought, probably not, because we don't have any money for me to go to college. But I knew I wanted to transcend my circumstance. And I knew education was a way to do it.
What were you transcending? What was your circumstance?
Well,
Because if you say transcend my circumstance, it means you want to
go
rise
beyond.
above where you are, because where you are doesn't seem like where you are supposed to end up.
And that's true. And while in my neighborhood, everybody lived like I lived, they wore the clothes that I wore, that was in the era of Dallas and Dynasty. And I thought, I don't know how you get to live like that, but that was pretty appealing to me. and it made sense to me. I also had, back to becoming a principal, and it's ironic how this thing has come full circle. I also had a principal, Dr. Lula Powell, and Dr. Powell wore pantyhose.
What an awesome woman.
And everybody in my life at that time that I perceived to be together wore nylons. And I asked Dr. Powell, you know, how do you get to wear pantyhose? And she said, well, I went to college, and that opened that door for me. So I know it's a weird thing to think about, but
pantyhose were a representation of, or a marker of, a certain level of achievement.
Right. And in my mind, affluence. And I associated that with happiness.
And so
Sue Ellen wore pantyhose, Dr. Powell wore pantyhose. All the women that I perceived to be successful in that era, they wore pantyhose.
So this is just the idea about going to college. You didn't know what college was.
I had no idea.
You didn't know what it was actually going to do for you. You didn't know what you were going to pursue. You just knew that this thing called college was the next step toward Dynasty.
Right. I mean, essentially. And at the time, my choices were, as I saw them, I worked at Kentucky Fried Chicken on Magnolia.
Amen.
So I could continue to work at KFC, which there's nothing wrong with working at KFC, but people at KFC didn't wear nylons. I could go to college, which I thought I could go to UT, and then I had this notion, because I heard other kids talk about it, that I could go to Vandy. So fast forward from Green Elementary, Whittle Springs Middle School to Fulton High School. Here are my three choices as I see them, because my mother had instilled in me having a baby was not an option as a teenager. So that wasn't even a consideration.
All right, so let's pause right here, because I want to figure out, you got Kentucky Fried Chicken and Vandy on the line here, which you chose. I think we know. This is Anything is Possible with Pantyhose. We'll be back.
Possibility powered by Pilot Flying J, Covenant Health, Home Federal, and the Knoxville News Sentinel. Coming up.
God's plan was for Todd to be a first-round draft pick. So I ended up, we started a family, and I ended up resigning from Procter & Gamble.
Welcome back to Anything is Possible, brought to you this week by Legs Pantyhose. Remember Legs?
I do remember legs.
They were
I
in
remember
the egg.
the egg.
They were in the egg.
But the egg was the thing.
The egg was the thing. All right, welcome. My mother was so particular about pantyhose. I forget which one, but she was like, they had to be this, and she did some trick with fingernail polish.
Oh yeah, that keeps them from running.
Yeah.
And you know what?
Why would know that
I could have
much?
thought of Spanx, didn't, but sidebar, if you want to make Spanx, you just cut the feet off of control top pantyhose.
That's it.
There you have it.
Spanx. Welcome to the broadcast. Renee Kelly is the principal of West Valley Middle School, and we're talking about her life and her story of possibility. So I guess what I'm learning about you, two things. You're funny, but you're analytical. I don't know where you got that from, but you're laying out how you analyze the options in front of you, and you make decisions based on data, right? Mm-hmm. Is that you?
Yeah. With Briggs Myers, you have thinkers and you have feelers. I'm a thinker, but I'm equally a feeler. But I understood, particularly early on in my life, that a dream without a plan is just a wish. And I needed a plan. And so I began to really think through, what will it take for me to be successful?
And so what did you decide on?
Well, I didn't decide on KFC, and I didn't get in Vandy. So I ended up going to UT, but I went to UT and I didn't have any preconceived notions about what college was like. I didn't know what to expect from college. And I'm not embarrassed at this point in my life to say this, but I didn't understand at the end of the 4 years how you interviewed for a job. I just understood that that was going to be the next step for me. after high school. And so, as my grandmother would say, birds of a feather flock together. So you meet people in school, and
Right.
you listen to what their aspirations are, and then you start to understand through just different interactions with different people
Here's
how
here's
it
the
comes
world
together.
of
Yeah.
possibility, I should
Yeah.
say. Possibility. The word possible means able to be, and so you get around a different group of people, and then there are different things that are able to be. So you finish UT. I guess by the time you get to the end of UT, you have some idea of what you want to do. And ladies and gentlemen, she was going to go into communications. You have to tell this story. You would have been dynamic in the field of communications, but you opted out for what reason?
I opted out because, and I'm dating myself, but when I went to Tennessee, we were on the quarter system. And so early on, I had a project, it must have been in like a Communications 101 class, and we researched the salaries of broadcasters. And I did a lot of soul searching, and after much soul searching, I decided
That's not soul searching.
I don't wanna do
That's not soul
this.
searching. That's just looking at the numbers. They make what?
Yeah, I did,
Next.
and candidly, I was shocked by it because when you turn on the TV, everyone looks nice.
Yes.
And they say all the right things, and I had no idea that they lived on shoestring budgets. So I
Right.
said, I don't
Like,
want to do
You're
that.
not going to be on Dynasty.
No, I thought, this won't get me a pair of pantyhose.
So what'd you do?
I decided to get a business degree.
Okay.
And I became a marketing major. And again, that really was born from just listening to people talk about careers that were lucrative. And
Right.
I thought, okay, late 80s, early 90s, what organizations look like are starting to change. And I thought, as an African American woman,
But listen how analytical you were. That's what's wearing me out, is that it's so strategic.
well, at that time, you know, when you're in marketing classes and you look at market research and you think, okay, demographically, the country's starting to change. So companies will start to change. So what their needs will look like, that's going to change. And so there will be a place for me in a Fortune 500 company.
Which ended up being what?
Procter & Gamble.
Why? Right. So you make it up the food chain at Procter & Gamble. You become great at sales, and then you start training people, and
Other
you're an
sales rep.
executive at Procter & Gamble. On my card, though,
with
here.
pantyhose, by the way.
With pantyhose.
And by the time I
Looking
get to a place
fabulous.
I can buy pantyhose, nobody's wearing pantyhose anymore.
Right, it's all gone. But enter Todd Kelly Sr.
Did I perk up?
Yeah. Enter Todd Kelly Sr., who is an athlete at the University of Tennessee. He ends up playing in the NFL, and now you've got a real choice to make.
Yeah.
You can be on, they don't have a Football Wives show yet, do they?
No,
Right.
and candidly, I would not have been on that. But Todd and I met when Todd was a freshman. And so I'm a little taller than Todd, not
No.
older than Todd. And he loves to tell people that story. But when Todd and I met, he was 18 and I was about to graduate. And so I kind of had in my mind what my life was going to look like and how
Right.
that was going to play out. And then Todd shows up on the scene and says, okay, let's make a deal. I'd like to marry you. And whoever ultimately has the more lucrative career, the other will support. And I thought, well, okay, that's a great plan because I'm going to be the CEO of Procter & Gamble. And
You'll make a great,
Yeah,
big, strong, you can get stuff off the shelf.
yeah, so I just thought that's how things would work. And he said, no, I'm going to go to the NFL. And I thought, again, just thinking through things practically, I thought statistically speaking, that's probably not going to happen. But hey, he's a dreamer and that works. Well, unbeknownst to me, God's plan was for Todd to be a first round draft pick. So I ended up, we started a family and I ended up resigning from Procter & Gamble.
Wow.
But
And
again, that opened up the doors for other possibilities.
Because you are principal.
Correct.
Renee Kelly. All right, let's take a break here because when we come back, the one thing that I really wanted to talk to you about, because you are dynamic. I mean, you're just like, woof, right? But I know the source of your woof. And that is one word with an exclamation point. It's God.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about God. I want to talk about family. I want to talk about Clark and TK Jr. and I want to talk about how you ended up being Principal Renee Kelly. Deal?
Deal.
All right. We're going to pause now for fresh pantyhose. We will be back. This is Anything is Possible.
Coming up,
When you ask me about big challenges in my life, we all face challenges, but I've never had a time that I could even recall that I've never had hope.
Welcome back to Anything is Possible. My guest is Principal Renee Kelly. She's principal of West Valley Middle School. Based on how charismatic and bubbly you are, how faith forward you are, I would never assume that you've had any difficulty in your life.
None of us are exempt from challenges. It's just how you respond to the challenges.
When we were doing the pre-interview for this interview, I'm driving in my truck, and when I hung up from talking to you, that was the thing that hit me. It's like, this woman loves God.
Yeah, I do.
Like love.
Yeah.
But you're like out there with it. You're not trying to fabric soften it. Right?
You know what? Because of how I'm wired, I don't know that I even could fabric soften it. And when you're in a love relationship, and I use this analogy a lot, when you're in a love relationship with someone, you can't wait to tell people about that person. And I like to shop. And when I find a great sale, I can't wait to tell my girlfriends about it. And so when I think about my love relationship with God, it's not any different than any of those other things for me. It's just a natural part of who I am. And so we have this thing at our house that we say almost every morning. When we encounter people, we want them to want to know God because they know us. And if they can't see the God in us, then how will they know we're different?
Wow. So that really is the big driver in your life. I mean, that's what has made all of this possible.
Yeah.
And is it a God thing that you ended up being a teacher? Because you're this corporate lady that's going to be CEO of Procter & Gamble or CEO of something, and you end up being a teacher and then a principal. Is that a God thing?
Yeah, that's definitely a God thing.
So how do you do that in 30 seconds or less?
I think, and I shared just with a group the other day, I read a devotion daily, and yesterday's devotion, well, I was going to say ironically, but godly, in a godly sense, was about waiting, trusting, and hoping. And so I'll try to condense this in down to 30 seconds. But in my life, what I've learned is because of my faith, if I wait on God, God's going to be God, and He's going to do what He does because that's who He is. And then if I trust that He is who He is and He's going to do what He says He's going to do, then I always have hope. And when you ask me about big challenges in my life, we all face challenges, but I've never had a time that I could even recall that I've never had hope. And that's because I'm not happy, I have joy, and they're different. I think when you're happy, that's conditional. That's based on your circumstance. But when you have joy, that comes from the Lord. Okay, sorry, I know that wasn't 30 seconds, but hey.
TK Jr., going to UT. What kind of guy is he, and what kind of mom have you been to him?
He, and back to it being a God thing, he is an exceptionally talented, intelligent, sensitive person.
He's a beast on the football field. What's his GPA?
I think it's a 4.1. He gets that from me. He gets that football field stuff from his daddy, but he gets that other stuff from me.
Tell me about Clark.
Clark is energetic. She's outgoing. She's incredibly confident. She's very smart. Clark is like me, only Clark's wiser.
Really?
Uh-huh.
Wiser?
Yeah. I think Clark is wiser.
TK Sr.
Oh gosh, he is a man of faith. He's funny. He's caring. He's compassionate, and he's a giver. He gives back a lot. So much so that sometimes I get frustrated with him because he gives so much. But in terms of our faith, I'm learning that sacrifice and offerings can look different. And so I know for him, when he gives to the community, that's an offering. And so I'm learning to be better with that. I wouldn't say okay, but better.
Before we wrap up here, we got about a minute and 30 seconds or so. Principal Renee Kelly, you ended up having this wonderful ride, this wonderful journey with God. But as a principal, what do you want your kids to see? What do you want the spirit to be in that school? And what have you learned about success and possibility?
What I would like for my legacy to be is I would like for the kids at my school are incredibly smart, and they have very supportive parents, and I'm blessed by that. I know that that's not coincidental. But I want my legacy to be that everywhere these children go, I want it to be better because they were there. I want West Valley to be a better place because I passed that way. And if that's all my kids take away, you know, I'd like to think that they're going to remember everything in the middle school curriculum, grades 6 through 8, but I know that's not going to happen. But if those children leave kinder, and then it's like a ripple effect, it's like a pond. If they go out and they're kind and they're difference makers and they realize the possibilities, then they touch lives, and then those people touch lives. And that's how you change things. And I want them to realize that anything is possible.
The middle school Halloran is sitting at the table in front of you. You've called him into the principal's office. You're trying to give him some rules for the roads, rules for the road. Take 20 seconds and teach me the rules of the road.
Okay, so before you come in, I'll pray, because I have to ask God what it is He wants your heart to hear. And I would encourage you to always believe in yourself. I would explain to you that you're going to have to work hard because nobody's going to give you anything. But then I would also send you out the door knowing that I believe in you and that the possibilities are limitless for you.
Wow. You believe that anything is possible, don't you?
Yeah, I do. And I try to live it every day. I try to live it every day. And not necessarily in what I say, but in how I let my light shine.
And it does shine. Renee Kelly, Principal Renee Kelly, thank you for joining us. We'll see you next time on Anything is Possible.